Does your child complain and whine when it comes time to read? Are there even tears during reading with your child and you're not sure what to do or how to turn things around? Stick around. Today I'm going to share with you several ideas on why this is happening and what you can do to fix it. Hi, I'm Rebecca with the Parent Teacher Bridge, where you can find the ideas and resources you need to empower you to be your child's most influential teacher. So let's talk about kids that are reluctant readers. When you say it's time to read, maybe they cry, maybe they whine, maybe they stomp, and they are completely opposed to it. What you need to know, though, is there could be different reasons for different children. Since I don't know your child personally, I'm going to share with you some different reasons that I've seen over the years for children not wanting to read. But before we get started, click like and subscribe if you would like to see more videos for your child's learning. I want you to know that I've been there before. I've had one of my own children struggle with wanting to actually sit down and read. I've worked with multiple tutoring students in the past who have definitely had fits on their parents not wanting to read, and I've had parents come to me with tears in their eyes over their child's reading struggles. So let's get into the reasons why maybe your child is fighting you on reading. Reason number one, distractions. So there are other things going on around them, maybe other things that are just only distracting them and they can't focus, but maybe it's other things going on that are more appealing to your child than reading. This is something I struggle with my oldest son. He actually has more work to do than his younger siblings, who are 4.5 and 6.5 years younger. So they naturally are done with their work before he is, and it can be a real struggle when it's time for him to read, but the other two children are off playing somewhere, particularly if he can hear them playing. So in that situation, you're going to want to either figure out a different time schedule or just remove your child altogether. Maybe they need a special spot to read. Maybe you would like to have a little corner that they have decorated, or maybe a little tub that they can sit in when it's their specific reading time. Whatever it is that you choose, have a specific time and place that is protected, that your child knows no matter what, this is where they read and this is when they read. Because if you always give them the option, read now or later, and your child isn't going to want to read, they're always going to put it off on till later. And then they're just going to be tired and it's going to be more of a struggle. And I'm okay with my children reading in bed, but I often realize, you've got to wake up the next morning and you don't want to stay up too late. Or on the other hand, you've put it off until reading in bedtime and then your child falls asleep instead of getting their reading in for the day. So if you stick with your schedule of having that protected time and place, eventually your child's going to realize, even though they're fighting back, they're not going to win because you're not going to give up. It's every day at this time in a specific place. And you may not have to do that for all your children. You may only have one child that's fighting you. Again, that's if distractions are the primary reason for your child not wanting to read. But there may be other reasons too. Let's talk about those. Reason number two, why your child might not want to read for you, is that they haven't developed a love for reading. Now, reading doesn't have to be their favorite hobby, just like some kids really like math and they're good at it. Some kids dislike math, but they're still good at it. Some children may be really good at reading, but it's still not their favorite thing to do, and they would prefer to do other things. I can think of adults like that, can't you? But we still want to foster as much as we can a love for reading, because so much other learning comes out of reading, whether that be reading nonfiction or whether that be reading actual stories in a book. So let's talk about, how are you going to develop that love for reading? One of the ways that we've done that in our household is to have read alouds. So I read aloud a book with my children. That may be a chapter book where it actually is a story we share over several weeks. When I've done this in the past, I've picked some chapter books that are classics and some chapter books that have movies based on them. So then we celebrate at the end of the few weeks having that read aloud by watching the movie that is based on that read aloud. And that opens up all sorts of discussions on comparing and contrasting. And it's a little culminating activity and a reward that we can do at the end. Another thing that we have done to develop a love of reading is to go to the library and check out a bunch of different books with different genres. When we bring those home, I don't set those on the bookshelf because they're going to get mixed in. So I might have a basket or a tub to put these library books in, and then I spread them out on the table where my children can see the front of them. You know, with books that are on a bookshelf, you generally only see the binding, and it's not very motivating, at least for my children, to go to the bookshelf and pull out a book. However, if I have the books spread out where they can see the fronts of the books, they are much more likely to just kind of walk by and say, oh, look, open up that book. And they kind of get distracted from whatever play they're doing, whatever they're engaged in as they walk by. And they're distracted in a good way because they sit down and they start looking at a book that they otherwise would have never pulled off the bookshelf. So I keep the books in view, and I go to the library to constantly trade out different books and expose them to different genres. When I first gave my oldest child a book that was known as a graphic novel, where it still's going to have a lot of text within the book, but it has some little drawings and stuff like that too, I was amazed at how quickly he read it. Sure, it may not have been as much text as a book that had no pictures, but it still had more text than a picture book, and he just devoured that in a way that he had not done with books that didn't have pictures. So make sure you're giving your child exposure through a lot of different books and allowing your child to listen to some books, whether that be you reading them or whether that be some audiobooks, to help foster that love of reading. Hi, parents. Is your child struggling to read or even hates to read? Nothing you have tried has worked? Get my free guide, 5 quick tips to immediately help your struggling reader. I'm going to show you the simple tricks that I've used for years to successfully improve children's reading and their confidence in reading. It's easy, it's simple, and it's free. Just go to theparentteacherbridge.com/reading help. You can find that link in the description below. The third reason why your child might not want to read to you is that the books you're reading with them or having them read aloud to you are too difficult for their current level. Doesn't mean they can never read them. It doesn't mean they can't enjoy the books with you reading them to them. But often I find, particularly with new tutoring students that come to me, is that they are attempting to read books that are too hard for them. They're what is known to be their frustration level. So how do you know if a book is too hard or too easy for your child? Well, when I go to the library and I'm selecting books for my child to read, I open them up to just about any page. And since I regularly hear my child read, I kind of have a good handle on what words he knows and doesn't know. If your child is struggling on more than 2 or 3 words on a page, that's going to be too much. That's going to be too hard. On the other hand, if your child knows every word, page after page after page, it might be too easy. But I haven't seen too easy of books be the reason why a child doesn't want to read, generally speaking. I have seen children go for really easy books when they go to library time at school because they know they can read them and they're fun for them. But I have seen children be discouraged when they get books that are too hard. So again, keep it down to 2 or 3 words a page that they will have to slow down and sound out. If you go more than that, the book is simply too hard for them. They're using too much brain power with trying to sound out words, and they're not getting to enjoy the book and enjoy the stories or even enjoy the facts that are in the book. So, what do you do with that? Well, if your child is enrolled in school, you're going to want to talk to your teacher, your child's teacher, about that. You might even request that your child be tested for a learning disability. But one simple thing that any parent can do with their child is to practice reading more at home and back up to easier books. You might have to back up so far that the book is a book where they know all the words in it. And you might have to do that for a few weeks to build their confidence and gradually move on to books that are a little bit more difficult level. So what do you do about books and knowing their official level? Well, you don't have to know their official level as long as you can open up and see how many words on a page your child can read. But if you would like to know more about a book's official level, you need to know that there are several different leveling systems. One is guided reading, one is Lexile, and there are a few others as well. Some books come with a grade level equivalent. If you will go to scholastic.com, there is a book wizard. So if you Google Scholastic Book Wizard, you're going to come up with a screen where you can search at least common books, titles, and you can find what is their rating, what is their grade level equivalent, what is their guided reading level. Your child's school may not use guided reading, but it can at least give you some sort of benchmark as far as which book is harder and which book is easier. You might even be able to get an app on your phone to tell those apart. If you are having a time with a reader who is actually struggling, it's not that they don't like to read, it's not the distractions, they're actually struggling to read the words, there is nothing better than to have explicit phonics instruction. So whether or not your child happens to have dyslexia, they need to know the rules for sounding out words. And you need to have that discussion with your child's teacher. What program are they using that can help fix that? And you also need to know that even if you are not choosing to homeschool, there are programs written for homeschoolers that are very user-friendly for parents. Just to name one, out there is All About Reading. You might want to look into that. I'll leave a link in the description below, but there are many more out there. You don't have to be a homeschooling parent to use these programs. I would also recommend that if you think your child is behind reading and they are enrolled in school right now, don't hesitate to use time on the weekends to help catch your child up. You can do this in an encouraging way. You can do it in a fun way. Help build their confidence by backing up to those easier level books. The great thing about all these three ideas about why your child might not want to read is that they can fix themselves over time. Let me give you an example. There was a little girl who used to come to me for tutoring for over a year. And I remember that first parent meeting I had with her mother and how she had tears in her eyes as she was concerned about her child getting behind. As I worked with her for over that year, she would come to me once a week, sometimes twice a week for tutoring. We'd use half an hour on phonics instruction, and we'd use half an hour where we applied those phonics rules using books that were just there at my house on the bookshelf. And I would open up the book and I would look inside and see what would be a good fit for her and could she read most of the words. And after doing that for about a year, I finally one day had to tell her, hey, you've read most of these books. I need one that you haven't read. I know that you've told me that you don't really like the Berenstain Bears books, but I need to give you a book that you haven't read yet so you can have some practice on something you've not memorized. So she was very good about it, had a very good attitude about it, and we started buddy reading this Berenstain Bears book. So I would read a page, she would read a page. Finally, it got to a point where it was my turn to read the page, but she interjected and she said, I want to keep reading. And I said, but it's my turn. And she said, yeah, but I think I like these books now, and I want to finish reading this book. And I was like, okay, be my guest. And she finished reading, and from that day forward, she enjoyed reading the Berenstain Bears books, which I love. I can't imagine anybody not liking those. But if you think about it, if you're a child that struggles with words just in one sentence, what would you do on a page of the Berenstain Bears books where they have about that much, about a paragraph's worth of words, some of them being multi-syllable words? Would it kind of scare you? Would you get a little bit anxious too? Of course. So we backed up to easier level books and eventually worked our way back, and she ended up liking it in the end instead. Maybe you have a child like that as well. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please share it with a friend. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Check out the helpful links below. If you are interested, don't forget I have the 5 quick tips to immediately help your struggling reader. I'll leave that link also. You can find the Parent Teacher Bridge on Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget, you are your child's most influential teacher.